Woo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Monday through Friday, it's a daily show, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. We're going to get into a lot of local news this morning. So buckle up. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. First, I do want to talk about how I agree with Kimberly. I called her Cummings. Her last name is Harris now, I guess. Kimberly Harris. She is a mayoral candidate for Normal. And I actually agreed with an answer that she gave at the candidate forum. So there was a forum hosted by this special interest group, and that's what this is. It's a special interest group, the Bloomington Normal Trades and Labor Assembly and Livingston and McLean County Building and Construction Trades Council. Okay, so that's a mouthful. And it's meant to confuse you, the long names of these special interest groups, but they hosted a candidate forum, and I'm going to be honest with you, pretty much all of the answers were pretty underwhelming of all of the candidates. I did like Kimberly Harris's. That's going to be hard to say. She used to be Chemberly Cummings. I guess she got married. I don't know. The leftist mayoral candidate here. I actually agree with her on one of her answers. I thought it was pretty good. So we're going to talk about this forum because they talked about a lot of issues and topics that could be impacting you in Bloomington Normal. So the election is April 1st, April Fool's Day. And I think early voting is going to be starting at some point in February. I'll look up the date, but early voting will begin very, very shortly. And here we go, another election cycle. I know you're probably still exhausted from the last one, but you got to keep up to date with your local candidates and make informed choices. And that's what I'm going to try to do for you is inform you so you can go make those choices. So we're going to get to all of it. Kimberly Harris, she actually had an answer on the Uptown Normal Marriott renovations. So she gave an answer that I really liked. So we're going to be talking about that here in just a second. So I do also want to get to Anna Navarro. She was on The View. She launched a vicious attack on the Black artist who performed at Trump's inaugural ball. Snoop Dogg was there performing as well. But also, just all the Black individuals who were participating in the inauguration events. She attacked them and said that they were trained SEALs. Nothing's more racist than a liberal who is going after a Black conservative, okay? So we're going to get to that. Plus, Colorado school districts, they are planning to resist President Donald Trump's deportation orders, although the deportation orders don't exactly start in school districts. The deportation orders are starting with hardened criminals, people who commit heinous crimes, come to this country, then commit heinous crimes. They're starting deportations with those individuals. So I don't even think school districts are being targeted here. But they're also, of course, these Colorado school districts, they are, breaking federal law by harboring illegal immigrants and not complying with the feds when it comes to immigration and enforcement of the immigration law. So we're going to get to all of that. But first, I'm going to be reading a little bit from WGLT. They did cover this. I haven't seen a whole lot of people cover this candidate forum. I think the Pantograph covered it and maybe WMBD. I was not even aware that this was going on. Probably a lot of conservatives didn't know it was going on. It is a labor union. So that shouldn't shock you. If you didn't know that this was happening, this candidate forum, it was designed that way. The labor unions traditionally only interact with Democrats because the Democrats will definitely sign on to government contracts with them and ensure that they're making money hand over fist. And it's designed so that way you wouldn't attend the event. Okay, the candidate forum. Okay, so don't be shocked if you didn't know it was going on. So the Bloomington Normal Trades and Labor Assembly and the Livingston and McLean County Building and Construction Trades Council. Gosh, that is such a long name. And they have these long names so that way by the end of it, you're like, what do they even do? It's all designed to confuse you. It's designed to keep you in the dark. So the candidates for Bloomington and Normal Mayor, they were hosted. The city council contested wards were there. Heartland Community College trustees, Normal Township supervisors were invited to speak. I don't know if Chad Burke was invited to speak. They ultimately, and I'm not shocked by this, I don't think Chad Burke was honestly there. I'd have to ask him, but he's going for Normal Township Supervisor, and Crystal Label is going for Normal Township Supervisor. If I'm not mistaken, there's a pretty hefty salary that goes along with being Normal Township Supervisor. And I don't know if the invitation was extended to both candidates. I'd have to double check on that, but 6 candidates were endorsed, Crystal Label being one of them for Normal Township Supervisor. I'll get to her in just a second. But all the candidates were asked about their support in the effort to reform or undo the Tier 2 pension system. Now, all of these candidates, I don't think that they could do anything. Okay, now simply this special interest group, the Bloomington Normal Trades and Labor Assembly and the Livingston and McLean County Building and Construction Trades Council, they were just simply asking the candidates for their take or their position on this, because there's nothing that these candidates can do, I believe, at a local level to reform or undo or enhance the Tier 2 pension system. Okay, there's nothing that they can do. This is all state level. Okay, so look, folks, Illinois, they enacted the second tier of benefits for public employees hired after 2011. The change was meant to reduce retirement benefits for newer employees, okay, because they were exorbitantly high with the tier 1. Okay, so now we've introduced tier 2, and we're trying to, what tier 2 was supposed to do, it's supposed to help address the state's unfunded pension liability. Let me be clear. The state has an unfunded pension liability of $140 billion. Billion with a B, folks. This is unsustainable, and nobody's going to be getting their pensions if we don't address the $140 billion, or at least stop the bleeding. That's what Tier 2 was designed to do. It's to stop the bleeding. And yes, newer employees are not going to be getting the ritzy pension system or pensions that the Tier 1s are getting. It's a little less than the Tier 1s, but we have to do something because the state has an unfunded pension liability of $140 billion. This is the biggest thing affecting Illinoisans, and we have to do something to address this hole. We are in the hole, $140 billion when it comes to pensions. So when they are asked if they support reform or undoing the Tier 2 pension, really what this is they were being asked if they support enhancements to the Tier 2 pension system. They want to make Tier 2 Tier 1. Okay. Democrats and leftists, they want to enhance that pension system, and they want to make that $140 billion double. Okay, they don't care about the unfunded pension liability. They think money grows on trees, and they don't understand what kind of effects that has on our state having this unfunded pension liability. So yeah, they don't understand economics, or at least they don't care as long as they get their money in the short term, okay? So all the candidates for mayor expressed support for local labor leaders continuing their efforts to change the Tier 2 system. So this is like super silly, this question, just to begin with, because the mayors of Bloomington Normal cannot do anything to change or to enhance Tier 2 system. Now, the local labor unions can do something. They can go and lobby their state legislators, which they're doing and have been doing for years now, to enhance Tier 2 because they want more pension money. They want a bigger retirement, these people in the government labor unions, okay? So here's what Chris Coos said, according to WGLT. If there are 2 people doing one job and one's on a Tier 1 pension and one's on a Tier 2 pension, those pensions should be the same. No. They shouldn't be the same. The whole purpose of Tier 2 is to address the unfunded pension liability that we have, the $140 billion, Chris. So if it means addressing our unfunded pension liability, then yes, I am all for somebody making a little less than somebody else, okay? We don't live in a socialist society. Some people have higher pensions than others. Welcome to America. Okay, so they shouldn't be separate, is what Chris Coos says. They're doing the same work. They have the same rights. and we need to look at that. Yeah, but there's a little thing called reality there, Chris. And the reality is that we have a $140 billion elephant in the room, and we have to address that. And you have your decades and decades of your colleagues and your Democrat buddies causing that unfunded pension liability because they don't know how to budget. Okay, and they don't know what they're doing financially in Springfield. So opponents say that Tier 2 pensions, the Tier 2 pension system could actually trigger safe harbor provision if the pensionable salary cap doesn't keep up with the Social Security cap. This could leave the state vulnerable to lawsuits. That's what opponents say to Tier 2. If you oppose Tier 2 and if you want to enhance Tier 2, you think that it's going to trigger the safe harbor provision. Look, folks, State Representative Plain Wilhauer, he has a bill right now that says if an individual pensioner triggers safe harbor, then the state could put in statute, hey, the state pays the difference plus $1. Okay, the bill is very, very simple, something that they don't do in Springfield. If they're worried about triggering safe harbor, which I don't think that they ever will, but if a pensioner triggers safe harbor at the end of their career, when he or she determines their pension, if their pension falls below safe harbor, then the state can make up the difference with this bill that he's got. Can you guess who's against the bill and doesn't want to look at the bill? Democrats. Democrats in Springfield don't want to touch this bill because guess what? It's simple and it's the cheapest, most fiscally responsible way to fix it. And it doesn't put on broad enhancements across the entire system. And this is a system, like I said, that is severely underfunded. The $140 billion it's underfunded, okay? This is what Mboka said, and I think this is absolutely hilarious. People get into public service because they knew that the benefits would be good and that they'd be there. Okay, if you're getting into government, especially in the state of Illinois, number one, do not expect that you're going to be getting your benefits. I told you, if anybody is listening, $140 billion pension liability, okay? It's underfunded, this whole entire system. So when you get into public service, you don't actually think that the benefits are going to be there if you know that little fact about the $140 billion underfunded pension system that we've got, okay? And then he says, but if you know you're reducing those benefits, then it's just not worthwhile and people start to look at other things, and we definitely need to take a look at that. So he's suggesting here, Mboka, the current mayor of Bloomington, okay, he's suggesting that people don't get into government if they don't get their high pensions and if they don't get paid. Okay, the definition of servant, at least in the Bible, servant is someone who serves others, sacrificing their needs for the benefit of others. We used to have a sentiment. Now, I'm not saying public servants or people who work in government in the public sector, I'm not saying that they should do it volunteer work, but you should definitely be going into government knowing, especially if you're going into government in the state of Illinois, knowing that we have a $140 billion underfunded pension system. You should definitely go into it knowing that, yeah, I'm really not in it for the money. I just want to serve my community. Okay. And I'm not saying to do it for zero, but you have to understand Illinois is so broken. And if you get into government, you're not going to be making good money as a public servant. Only the states that are fiscally responsible get to have that luxury, not you, Illinois public servant, because we've had decades of Democrats screwing it up for us. Okay. So, number one, people usually don't get into money or get into government for the money, or at least it used to be a sentiment. Now, I guess that's the problem with Illinois government and why we've ended up in this mess, because people have this philosophy that going into government should make you tons of money, which is just a broken philosophy. And if you're doing that, you're part of the problem. All right, I got to take a quick break, but we're going to cover a little bit more of this local news. So far, all of the answers here have been very underwhelming. Mayor Chris Coos talking about how everybody should have the same pensions. Sorry, Chris, we live in reality. We have a $140 billion pension, unfunded pension system. And then Mboka is saying that, hey, people get into public service for the benefits. Yeah, that's probably why we're in this mess. Everybody's been voting to give themselves more and more money, and now we're broke, and now we can't give anybody money. That's why we're in this mess. And he's suggesting that people should only get into government because they're in it for the money, which maybe you're not too far off there, Mboka. It seems to be the case here in the state of Illinois. All right, I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button. We're doing something a little bit different this morning. We are covering the local news here in the 6 o'clock hour. I will be coming back. There was plenty of answers. I'm going off of this article in WGLT. They were there. I had no idea that this was really going on, this candidate forum. And that shouldn't shock you. Republicans, if you didn't know and you wanted to attend, Republicans are not invited to labor group things. I'd have to reach out to Chad, see if he was actually invited to this. He is a candidate for the Normal Township Supervisor. Of course, the very winded group, the labor union interest group here, the Bloomington Normal Trades and Labor Assembly and the Livingston County, McLean County Building and Construction Trades Council, they hosted this event. And it's designed to be long. It's designed to be, breathy because they want to confuse you about what they actually are. This is just a bunch of people who work in a union. They work like probably construction, which, look, I am not totally anti-union. I'm not anti-private unions or anything like that. You have the right to assemble. I'm very much for that. Okay, the right to assemble is very, very important. It's laid out in our Constitution for a reason. However, the labor unions in the state of Illinois have become behemoths. They are mammoths. Okay, they are huge, and they are the ones operating your government, not the representatives. And I'm going to get to an example here. Actually, Dan Brady admitted it in his answer when he was asked about the AFL-CIO, which is a labor union, the American Federation Labor something. I'll look up what that means. Like I said, it's designed to be long and winded. This is the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations. Okay, so this is another long-winded labor group. Dan Brady was asked about his AFL-CIO rating from his time as being a state representative, and it hovered around the 30-40% range. And I don't think that's anything to be embarrassed about. Okay, the way Dan Brady should have been answering this question when he was asked about his 30 to 40% range, he should have said, "Yeah, I didn't go to Springfield to represent special interest groups. I went there to represent my district, and because this labor group gave me a bad rating, I'm not too butthurt about that, because guess what, folks? I went there to represent the people of my district, and the people of my district wanted me to do this." Okay, but this is a really interesting answer, and I'm going to take this. Here we go. I'm going to throw it up here. This is really interesting, and this should tell you everything you really need to know about state government and about your local government. On votes that Labor came to me and said, "These are major votes where we need your help," like the gas tax, I voted for it. Okay, this was a gas tax hike on you. I don't know how many cents on the dollar it raised your gas. So when you actually went to get gas, and this was supposed to go towards like roads and bridges and things like that, and you would raise the gas tax. Okay, this is how they do it. They raise your taxes, they take that tax money, and then they give it to a government or to a contracted union and they make, these backroom deals with these unions, and they say, hey, you support me in my campaign, you donate to me in my campaign when I'm in Springfield. What I'm going to do is make sure that the money is there, so that way we can give you all of these contracts, and we'll pay you good money to go work on your roads and streets and things like that. You live in Illinois. It takes years, sometimes 2-3 years, for a stretch of highway to be constructed and to be redone. What they do, they raise your taxes, they give them to the government unions, or the unions who are contracted by the government to do this work. They do the work, and they're paid exorbitant amounts of money for an exorbitant amount of time. Okay, so they essentially say what would take maybe 2-3, they're not about efficiency, maybe 2-3 guys, right? And this is an example, 2-3 guys to do a contract to fulfill, this broken road. Okay. And they've got, heavy duty equipment. What they'll do is they'll hire 20 guys to do that same job, and they'll send them out there with like forks and spoons to go out there and construct the road. So that way they're making way more money, and more people are making money. Okay, so that is what we're talking about here. And the unions here in the state of Illinois have gotten to be behemoths, and they operate there. We have no legislators. We have no legislators. Essentially, every single legislator, I would say most legislators in state government, are beholden to the labor unions, and they do what the labor union wants. And Brady just admitted this. He says, I was the only Republican, one of 9 Republicans in the House that did it. I voted for the gas tax, which costed me 2 opponents in the next couple of Republican primaries, but I did it for the labor because they asked me to do it. Okay, so that is not something that you want in a politician. You want a free thinker and somebody who thinks like you, not somebody who is going to do and vote the way the labor union wants him to vote. Okay, so that's just my 2 cents on it. That's a crazy answer. I'm back. Hey, good morning. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Before we took the break, I was telling you a lot about this candidate forum. I'm looking through WGLT. It looks like that they had covered this. I'm not sure if Republican candidates were, or not even Republican candidates, if all the candidates were invited. There were 6 endorsements made. One of them was for Crystal Abel, a current county board member, which I don't even know how like ethical that is for a county board member to also be serving as the Normal township supervisor. It seems like a conflict of interest. There are scenarios where the county can provide assistance to the town of Normal. Now, if she sits on the Normal town supervisor, or sits in the Normal town supervisor role, she could put her thumb on the scale. I'm not saying that she'd do this, but it opens up the door for this kind of stuff to happen. She could put her thumb on the scale and say, hey, county board, we need your assistance here in the town of Normal. And then that's not fair to Bloomington, right? Because she's the Normal town supervisor. She might be asking, the county for favors, the county government, and being that she sits on the county government, she will grant that, or at least vote favorably for the town of Normal. You get what I'm saying? There's a potential conflict of interest here, and that alone should make you question, why would I vote for a Crystal Abel for Normal town supervisor? The conflict of interest there is enough to say, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. That's kind of unfair to Bloomington. It breeds potential problems. So before I took the break, I was telling you about Mboka Mwambe's answer. He's the current Bloomington mayor, and he says, people get into public service because they knew that the benefits would be there. If you got into public service and you live in the state of Illinois, you should know that your pension is probably not going to be there. You should know before you go into public service, $140 billion unfunded pensions. Okay, that's what we've got in the state of Illinois, which is just enormous. It's insane. We're known for our pension debt. And then he goes on, he says, but if you're reducing those benefits, which they did with Tier 2, it's not a Cadillac plan, as you would say, or a Cadillac pension plan, as was the Tier 1. It's a little less than that, but this is a way to reduce our pension debt. Okay, this is a way to address the $140 billion in the hole that we're in. And people don't live in reality. They aren't thinking about the reality of the situation. And he says, but if you are reducing those benefits, then it's just not worthwhile. People will start doing other things, and we definitely need to take a look at that. Hey, hell, I'm all for people doing other things. Government getting smaller, not having to pay these exorbitant pensions and salaries, and government getting smaller, yeah, that's probably going to address the $140 billion we're in the hole. So yeah, hell yeah, I'm actually all for Tier 2. If it causes people not to get into government, yes, because we have a problem. We have some of the biggest we have the biggest. I think that Illinois is at least in the top 3 for government employees. Like, we are just paying so many employees at this point. I think if we're not the first, we're definitely in the top 3 as it relates to how many government employees we have in relation to the population of the state. Okay, so government employees, like for every 4 citizens, there's 4 government employees, whereas fiscally responsible states and fiscally responsible government, they'll have 4 citizens, 1 government employee. Okay, and that's being fiscally responsible. Why would you need 4 government employees for 4 citizens? Makes no sense. And like I said, the very definition of a public servant, at least in the Bible, servant is described as somebody who serves others and sacrifices their own benefits, and they sacrifice their own needs for the benefit of others. That is what a servant really is. And if you're getting into government because you want to make money, especially if you live in the state of Illinois, you're silly. 1, 2, you're a terrible person. Okay, so the role of government was never to be this place where you could make all kinds of money, and that's where we're at in the state of Illinois, and that's why we have the $140 billion unfunded pension system. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit. According to WGLT, Normal mayoral candidate Kathleen Lorenz and Bloomington mayoral candidate Dan Brady were asked about their voting records. Lorenz was asked about why she voted against. Now, this was a good move on Lorenz. $14.9 million property tax levy. This is an increase, folks, of about 5%. And this passed 4-3 last month. So it didn't even pass. So she didn't even get her way with this. She voted against raising that property tax levy. Prior to that vote, Lorenz said she wanted to give some relief to our taxpayers and preferred a flat or nearly flat tax levy. Now, here's what I would have suggested if I was on the Normal Town Council. I would have said, hey, let's not just keep it flat. Let's actually decrease it. Let's do a zero-based budget here, okay? Because here's what Lorenz said. Let me dig into this. Lorenz says, by me voting against that, I was not shortchanging pensions 1 penny, which she's exactly right. I was saying that we did not need the unjustified $700,000 that I could not stand here in front of you and tell you what that would be for. We're getting to a point in government, in local government, at least with the town of Normal, where they have so much money, they have no idea where they're going to even put this extra $700,000. Okay, keeping that property tax levy flat, that still means the government gets more revenue. So they get more taxpayer dollars because property values go up, even if you keep it flat. Okay, we need a zero-based budget. We need to decrease that property tax levy. And when you increase the levy, this just means Normal gets an exorbitant amount of money, $700,000. She doesn't even know what they're going to do with it. Okay, so and this is the problem. We're expanding government from the previous year, and it really shouldn't be expanded because you wind up with things like an unfunded pension liability. And this is just your classic case of government getting too big and they're taking more and more money from you. And they have so much money, they don't even know what to do with it at this point. That's why Lorenz voted no to increasing the property tax levy. Just keep it flat, for Pete's sakes. Like, that's the least you could do. Man, I mean, because you're still getting a ton of money, like more than the previous year, because the property values go up. I mean, this is just insane. And then they were like, "Oh, why'd you vote on that?" And she like felt like she had to justify herself. No. You don't have to justify yourself. It's insane to be raising by 5% the property tax levy when we already pay the highest property taxes in the nation as the state. And of course, you want to provide some relief to the taxpayers. And in voting for a flat or nearly flat tax levy, that's not even really providing relief to the taxpayer. Providing relief to the taxpayer would be a zero-based budget, figuring out what you need, and then create a tax levy that gets you to that number of what you need. That is what a zero-based. People in the private sector understand this. You get it. Government, unfortunately, doesn't understand it. But Kathleen actually had a decent answer there. Now I want to get Dan Brady. Dan Brady was asked about his AFL-CIO. Now this is another big name, and it's meant to confuse you. American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations. This is just a major labor group, okay? Huge labor group. And they come out with these ratings, and they rated him from his time in the state as a state representative when Dan Brady was a state representative. Now, his rating hovered over the 30 to 40 range. I mean, if I was in the state house, mine would probably be 0%, okay? And here's why it would be 0%. You are representing people in your district. You're not representing a special interest group. Here's what Dan Brady is quoted saying from this candidate forum when he was asked about his AFL-CIO rating of 30 to 40% range, okay? He says, on the votes that Labor came to me and said, these are major votes that we need your help, like the gas tax, I voted for it. Okay, now that shafted you. The average citizen, you're making a product, you're going to your private sector job, okay, and you don't get these fluffy little government contracts. Your average citizen, that screwed you over because you're paying more at the pump. You know those exorbitant gas prices, why you pay way more in the state of Illinois than if you were to just travel down and go to Kentucky, you're paying like probably double. Yes, the reason why is because of the 9 Republicans, which included Dan Brady. They voted to increase your gas tax. Now, he goes on, he says, I was the only Republican, one of 9 in the House that did that. I voted for the gas tax, which costed me 2 opponents in the next Republican primaries, in the next couple of Republican primaries. Somebody with this line of thinking should not be serving in government. Okay. Oh, that costed me Republican opponents, like that is not how you should be viewing your votes. Oh, that costed me, opponents in the Republican primaries. You should be voting the way your constituency wants you to vote. The average Joe, the person who goes to work and has to fill up their gas tank, okay, and isn't employed by the government via government contracts. Okay, so he says, but I did it because the labor came and asked me to do it. Right here, folks, is they came, asked me to do it, and I did it. And now I'm asking for your for your endorsement. That's what this really is. They didn't wind up endorsing Dan Brady. And he goes, I did it for you. And this is why I tell Republicans all of the time. I say, don't do it. Don't compromise yourself for these people, because in the end, they're just going to screw you over, and they're going to go with the guy that's the Democrat and has a D by his name, okay? You need to fight against these behemoths and mammoths of these labor unions that have gotten out of control, and they think that they can control your vote as a representative. And these special interest groups are running the government, and this is a perfect example of how they're doing it. They go to your representative, they tell them to vote a certain way. They say, okay, I'm going to raise gas taxes and a gas tax hike on all my constituents in my district who have to go to work and fill their gas tanks up. And that's going to really hurt them. But I'm going to do it anyway because I want you to endorse me the next time I go around. And then it costs you more opponents, as you had said. It costs you more opponents the next time around you go in the primaries because your constituents are peeved off at this point and they start running people against you. Don't do it. Don't bend the knee to these people. They're special interest groups and they have government contracts, and they are not your average citizen. Your average citizen goes to work every day and fills up their gas tank. Why do you care about these people? These people are greedy. So I'm pretty sure Brady denied that he ever raised the gas tax in the past. I'd got to go look that up, but he admits it now because he's running in a Democrat-dominated area. And, admitting this will help him win, that he listened to the labor unions. And it's like, no, don't bend the knee to these people. They don't deserve your knee. They don't deserve fulfilling their demands. They don't deserve it, or for you to satisfy their demands of this special interest group. So it's very telling of the labor groups, too, what they do at a state level, where they lobby your state officials, your elected officials, and they only care about enriching themselves. And like I said, they get these government contracts, for the roads. That's what the gas tax is for. It's to, help with the construction of the roads, bridges, whatever. And, that'd be great. But you and I both drive on these roads. You and I both use these bridges. A lot of these projects that the unions are hired to do, it takes them years, sometimes 2-3 years to complete. And it costs just tons of money. We need to be doing a low bid process where we take the lowest bidder, whoever's going to do it the cheapest and the most effective. Okay. And these guys are not in the business of doing that because they want, 20 people out there with forks and spoons doing the work. And then they get paid, by the hour, and they get paid these exorbitant. And I'm not totally against unions. I'm not totally against all of this, but I'm telling you, it's gotten out of control in the state of Illinois. All right, I got to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. 47 cents per gallon. Wow, that is shocking. Okay, so there you have it, folks. I mean, a percentage of the guys are just holding shovels or just holding the shovel. And one of the guys is holding a stop sign. These projects take forever. What we should be doing is ensuring, that this is getting done. And if we are going to be doing a contracted process, we should be giving it to the lowest bidder and saving the taxpayer money, and they should be doing it efficiently. And if you really want my take on it, it's just it's gotten out of control with these labor unions. They've got way too much power in government. And for him to openly admit that he listened to this special interest group and then raised your taxes, that's shocking. It should scare you. And that's just a terrible answer. I just couldn't believe he gave that answer. But it's all about your audience, who you're talking to and you're in this Democrat dominant area. You're trying to appeal for the endorsement of these labor unions. And then they wind up picking, not Dan Brady for the endorsement. I'm actually going to read to you who they actually endorsed. I think they endorsed Cody Hendricks, but don't quote me on that. I got to look it up again. They did endorse Crystal Abel for Normal Township Supervisor, which alone, like I said, the conflict of interest. Yeah, Bloomington Mayor, they endorsed Cody Hendricks, Jenna Kearns for Bloomington Ward 1, Abby Scott for Bloomington Ward 9. Also a real weird conflict of interest. You've got the Corey Byrne, who I believe is in some sort of relationship with Abby Scott. He serves on the county board, McLean County Board, and if she's serving in Bloomington Ward 1, there's plenty of scenarios where the county aids Bloomington or aids Normal, or has to weigh in on issues in Bloomington or weigh in on issues on Normal. And it's a conflict of interest to have somebody who is in like this relationship with somebody who also serves on the county board and then is serving in Bloomington, because here's a scenario. I'm not saying Abby Scott would do this, but here's how it would play out. Abby Scott, she's like, wow, Bloomington Ward 9 really could use this. Perhaps the county could provide me this. I'm going to go and request of the county that they provide the Bloomington Ward this, Ward 9 this. Let's say, I don't know, there's might be a county road in Bloomington Ward 9 which would be, the responsibility of the county to go fix that road. Say that there's a big old pothole, a sinkhole in the road, okay, and it's in Bloomington Ward 9. But there's also a big old pothole in a county road in Bloomington Ward 1, okay, and you go and you say, hey, county, you have to fix this. Could the county possibly prioritize Ward 9 because Abby Scott is in a relationship with Corey Byrne, who also sits on the county board? Yes, that is a possibility. I'm not saying that it would happen, but that appearance of a conflict of interest there, it should be avoided, and you shouldn't be voting for people who are in relationships with higher levels of government. Crystal Abel herself serves as we see the corruption in Dalton. Look no further than Dalton. Tiffany Henyard, she is the super mayor, right? So she is the township supervisor, the Thornton Township supervisor, and then she's also the mayor of Dalton. Okay, so we've seen what Tiffany Henyard has done in her role as mayor. She is actually being investigated by the FBI for fraud and all of that. So it breeds corruption, or it could breed corruption, being that Crystal Abel serves on the McLean County Board and also serves as Normal Township Supervisor. Bloomington and Normal, like, just think about this via common sense. Bloomington Normal, they're in McLean County. McLean County oversees Bloomington Normal. Okay, Bloomington Normal, people in normal government, they oversee the residents of Normal. Bloomington oversees the Normal's residents. So if I live in Bloomington Normal, I'm a McLean County resident, okay? But if I'm a Bloomington resident, I'm not a Normal resident, okay? So there is a potential conflict of interest there. Yeah, so like I said, Cody Hendricks was endorsed ultimately. So even like Dan Brady admitting that he listened to the labor unions and hiked the gas tax on you by 47 cents. I think somebody threw it in the comments. That sounds right. The Illinois gas tax, 47 cents per gallon. So that's the total. I think it was 19 cents, to be honest with you. So that last vote that Dan Brady did was like 19 cents or something like that, I'm pretty sure. And it increases every July. Yeah, so there's already an increase every year. Yeah. So, Illinois citizens are just cash cows for the state. Yeah. So they just keep taxing you, and giving the money to their friends, like Michael Madigan. This is clear Michael Madigan type politics, where you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. I'm going to give you a government contract, and we're going to pay you with taxpayer dollars, and we're going to continue to tax the citizens into oblivion in order to pay you to do this government contract. It's broken, it's sad, and it's a really terrible situation here in the state. And I don't know if it's ever going to get any better, because this has been going on for decades. I had hoped that with Michael Madigan standing trial, some of these Illinois politicians would be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be on trial for this. But people are still doing it, and people admit it openly with their mouths. Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate you tuning in. We are going to be getting to Anna Navarro on The View. She actually launched this vicious attack on the Black artist who took part in the Trump inauguration events. Snoop Dogg, he performed at Trump's inauguration, and she has launched a vicious attack against these Black artists, and she's called them trained seals. Nothing is more racist than a woke liberal who against a conservative Black guy. I'm telling you, there's nothing more racist than calling these Black artists who simply performed at a Trump inauguration trained seals. That's what she called them, which is just wild to me. But we're going to get to all of that. I've been talking a lot about local candidates. We are approaching that time. April 1st is the election. Early voting starts, I think, sometime in February. I'm going to look up that date for you. But this was a really interesting quote from Dan Brady during the candidate forum. This was a quote in WGLT where he says, on the votes, when Labor came to me and said, these are the major votes, we need your help, like the gas tax. Now, remember, folks, this was a gas tax. It hikes your taxes, and every year the gas tax goes up in July. Okay, so we are literally cash cows for these government unions, for these labor unions to get these contracts with the government to go out there and pretend really to fix our roads and streets, because we're giving them all kinds of money to do it, but yet they're still not fixed and the roads and bridges are still crap. So he says, you know, every single time the labor came to me and these major votes, and they said, we need your help, like the gas tax, I voted for it. I was the only Republican, one of 9 Republicans in the House to do that. And I voted for the gas tax, which actually costed me 2 opponents the next couple of Republican primaries. Anybody who has that line of thinking, like, oh, now I've got opponents and I shouldn't have voted that way. If you really wanted to vote that way, then you wouldn't be salty about the Republicans who were primarying you, okay? If you really wanted to vote that way, you're probably salty and you probably compromised your values a little bit, because raising the gas tax on the citizenry for this labor special interest group, because they asked you to do it, probably was not in your your morale, or it probably, you had to compromise your values. But I did it because the labor came and asked me to do it. And that's not the way a representative should be going about their role in government. You should be representing your constituency, and everybody has to fill their car up with gas. And the gas tax, we have some of the highest gas taxes, I think, in the nation. And we're paying, well, somebody commented, I think it's 47 cents per gallon is a tax. So that goes straight to the government, for the government to then pay these labor unions who go out there and kind of pretend to fix our roads and bridges. So I do want to get to a couple of other things. According to WGLT, Cody Hendricks, who was endorsed, by the way, by the what do you call them? Bloomington Normal Trades and Labor Assembly in Livingston and McLean County Building and Construction Trades Council. Cody Hendrick was ultimately endorsed, and he's the other mayoral candidate in Bloomington, and he's seeking to replace incumbent Mboka Mwambwe. Hendricks talked about the downtown streetscape. This is yet another labor contract. I'm going to raise taxes on people in order to pay my buddies to do this job and to make the streets in downtown Bloomington look pretty. Okay, that's literally what this is. The downtown streetscape plan is $59.9 million. This is the last number I had. That's how much it's going to cost. And I feel like there's way more urgent priorities. I don't know about you, if you live in downtown Bloomington or if you frequent downtown Bloomington. I know whenever I'm down there, there's a big homelessness problem, and also the crime. Crime is bad, and I feel like those are more important things we should be focusing on, not these smart cities, 15-minute walkable cities that are crafted by the government so that way they can track your every move. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Not to mention, like, every time, like, the government does these, like, downtown streetscape projects, I mean, we've done studies on this, and most people actually don't use the, like, there was a study, and they make, like, these little walkways and paths and benches, and they strategically place them to try to get people to walk and sit in certain places in the city, okay? Now, study after study has shown that the people actually, they'll cut through the grass. They won't use the walkway. They won't sit on the bench. They'll go sit on, the curb or something. Americans specifically have this out of the box way of thinking, and this innate, I'm going to color outside of the lines mentality. And they actually prefer a rural way of life, and they prefer driving into their cities and not walking around their cities and living in their cities and in these urban areas. They don't prefer that. Almost every single study shows that they prefer a rural way of life and driving into work about 20-30 minutes every single day, if it means that they can stay out of these urban areas and these walkable towns and walkable cities and the side streets and the sidewalks and all of that. Every single study proves that Americans prefer that than living in these smart cities. And that would be the only reason, a justifiable reason, is to get residents to move in. to downtown Bloomington for this $59.9 million project. Like, you want more people to be there. People don't go to downtown Bloomington. They don't go to these urban areas. They drive into work and then they go right back to their rural areas because that's the way they prefer it. They don't use pathways or benches that are crafted by the government. They actually would walk in the grass before they use the walkway. I mean, this has been proven time and time again that Americans, they don't prefer sitting around in an urban area. They would rather go home to their families and drive into work. Okay, this has just been proven. This is American culture. It's deeply rooted. There's no changing it, really. And what they're trying to do is change the culture. And look, folks, I'm sorry, but that is not the role of the government to change American culture by expanding this downtown streetscape and this 15-minute city and this walkable city. That is not the role of the government. The role of the government is your public safety and infrastructure, basic infrastructure like your roads. Okay, so yeah, to sit here and to, talk about the downtown Bloomington streetscape. Here's what Cody Hendricks said about it. He says, "It's what I ran for city council, and that's why I'm running for mayor, because I have a lot of fear that while people say they are in support of it behind closed doors, they're going to not be in support of it." Yeah, because, they might openly say it because they're Democrat, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be openly for this downtown streetscape. But everybody knows that this is not a priority. And at the end of the day, I hope that nobody supports this thing, right? Good morning. According to WGLT, Cody Hendricks said this at the candidate forum hosted by the labor unions. Cody Hendricks, he is the other mayoral candidate. You've got Mboko, which I was shocked to see that he was at the candidate forum. I thought that he was not going to continue with this race, being that, you look at his campaign coffers, they're kind of depleted. But he was there, so he's seeking to replace incumbent Mboko, and then you have Dan Brady. Cody Hendricks says that he ran for city council because of the downtown streetscape. He's running for mayor because of the downtown streetscape. This is forcing culture onto the constituents and onto the Bloomington residents, okay? Downtown streetscape, $59.9 million. This is going to cost the taxpayers an exorbitant amount of money. Fancy sidewalks, the smart city, 15-minute walkable city. People will not even go and enjoy downtown Bloomington because, number one, there's a homelessness problem and there's a crime issue. And I think that we have to address those first before we start making fancy sidewalks. Number two, every study ever shows that Americans prefer a rural way of life. They drive in 15, 20 minutes to work every single day, and they don't live in downtown areas. They don't even use the dang sidewalks that are designed for them. They'll walk through the damn grass. Okay, so this is trying to change culture, and that's not the role of the government. Public safety and basic infrastructure is the role of the government. Let's get our sewers in line here. Let's get our streets fixed before we start worrying about the 15-minute walkable city in downtown Bloomington. I'll be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Every single study, like I said, shows this. Illinois Department of Revenue calculations set the new tax at 47 cents July 1st. That means the average dryer will be paying $184 a year more in state gas taxes. That's insane. So you are paying, and like I said, Brady, he openly admits this in this candidate forum, that he listened to the labor unions because the labor unions wanted that increase because the gas tax was supposed to go towards, fixing our roads and our bridges and everything like that. And I don't know about you, but I can honestly say that roads and bridges in Illinois kind of suck. The one on I-80 quite literally is a meme, and people say not to drive on it, and people will avoid that bridge because there's speculation that it will just crumble one day. I don't know if you drive on Illinois roads, but they suck almost in every other state. If you've traveled the country at all, you'll realize how bad Illinois roads are. There's a few states with pretty bad roads. Indiana actually has some pretty sucky roads as well. And part of this is because of the snow and the salt and things like that. Now, I wouldn't have no problem if this was actually making good road for. Think about this. Every Illinoisan is paying 184 extra dollars a year. Okay, this is $184. I'm reading this comment. The average or $184 a year. At that rate, why don't we have private roads? You know what I mean? Like if I had a private road, I could pay the $184 and I could pay for the roads that I use, and I know that, my money is going towards the roads that I use every single day. I mean, this is it gets tricky because there is a national security element to the roads. Privatizing roads would be really hard because there is a national security element to that. But I mean, at the end of the day, $184 from every single Illinoisan, like this is a lot of money, and they get more from that. This is just the gas tax. The contractors or the people who are contracted out to do this, they get even more dollars. This is just the gas tax. There's even more dollars that go to the unions to do this kind of stuff. There's spending bills, there's budget lines that are dedicated to spending, on roads and construction of the roads and building our roads. This is just a little bit of money. $184 a year is what you're paying for your roads. And I don't know about you, but the product is just not there. If I was paying $184 a year for, for example, say like, I don't know, your cell phone bill and you didn't get service, right? You probably would pull your cell phone. Yeah, I just think that's an exorbitant amount of money for a gas tax. Not to mention you're just taxed into oblivion. That's just gas tax, okay? Not to mention you're taxed on your paycheck. You're taxed when you buy things at the grocery store. You're taxed into oblivion, folks. My state has the worst roads. Oklahoma, probably. Yeah. Some states do. Some states don't, have the priority is not the roads. And, I'd be interested. Oklahoma, I've heard Alabama has pretty bad roads as well. There's some states that kind of dedicate taxpayer dollars to other things and they, neglect the roads, which I'd be all for, hey, let's neglect the roads, but at least they're not paying exorbitant amount of monies for those roads. Illinois, we're paying an exorbitant amount of money for the roads. That's just our gas tax, okay, $184 a year for our gas tax. And then on top of that, we're taxed in all other ways. But yet our roads suck. Okay, so we're spending more money on it. I'd have to look into Oklahoma. It's probably because of the extreme temperatures. Yeah, and Illinois has to deal with this too. We have an extreme temperatures, and there's only so much you can do. But we should be doing it very, very cheaply and effectively. And they don't do that. They go, with their buddies and they have these government contracts drafted up. Look at what Michael Madigan did. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. I'll give you this government contract. And then you're going to be paid very well. But hey, I want to be paid very well next go around for my campaign. When I'm running again, I want to be paid well. So yeah, there needs to be an unbiased way of granting these contracts, and I don't know how exactly that would work if we continue to publicly fund a lot of our roads and bridges and things like that. But right now, it is not done in a non-biased way. All right, I got to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Hey, welcome to the Red Kingdom. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. We've been kind of going through this candidate forum. There were a lot of answers given by the candidates. Cody Hendricks talked a little bit about the downtown streetscape, which is expected to cost nearly $60 million. Look, there's more urgent priorities, I think, in downtown Bloomington. Number one, fancy sidewalks aren't going to do anything to address the homeless crisis. I feel like you've got to address the homelessness issue before you start putting in fancy sidewalks, okay? And these are smart 15-minute cities. And before I took the break, I was telling you, look, people reject these. Every time downtown areas are revamped or renovated, it does not bring in more tourists, doesn't bring in more people to enjoy the downtown area. And Cody Hendricks says that he ran for city council because of this. He ran for mayor because of this. And look, folks, why support this when there's so many other issues like basic infrastructure, your sewers, your sewer system, and your policing and your crime and your homelessness issue? Those are issues that need to be addressed first before we start making fancy sidewalks and walkable cities. The walkable cities as well, they are not liked by Americans. Okay, study after study shows us that, you know, the government, they'll do this whole like downtown streetscape plan. Okay, and they'll try to make these paths and these benches, and they'll try to calculate your every move, and they'll try to figure out how best to serve you in this walkable city. And you don't use any of it. You'll walk through the grass. You'll sit on the curb. You won't use the bench, right? Because Americans are innately anti-coloring inside the lines. We're a very color outside the lines culture. We liked our rural communities. We like our suburbs. We like driving into the city for work, 15, 20 minutes, and then we go back home to our families. That is our culture. That's our way of life here in America. And really what these smart cities and these 15-minute walkable cities are doing, it's an attack on the American way of life. And, you know, it's been proven in surveys and studies time and time again that Americans have rejected this kind of living and they don't like it. Okay, they don't like living on top of each other. They like to go home to their families 15, 20 minutes outside of the city, and they come in and they work in their city and then they go home to their suburb. That is the American way of life. And to try to force this onto Bloomington residents, to try to force this on people, to revamp the downtown area, to get more people in, because that's the only reason that this would be justified, the 60 million. The goal here is to try to get more people in downtown Bloomington, which I understand, but it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, people are going to reject it. They're not going to stay in those areas. Now, I'm not saying, you know, basic infrastructure, maybe, you know, taking out the garbage. And I hear that that's an issue there in Bloomington. Making sure the basic infrastructure is superb. So that way people, you know, after their shift will go frequent these downtown Bloomington businesses. Then yeah, I'm all for that. But here's the thing, no matter how much money you put into this, people are not going to be spending more time there. It's just the way American culture is. They go home and they don't live in these places. They go home after work and they prefer their rural way of life. All right, I do want to shift gears. One question that was asked of the candidates at this candidate forum. Like I said, this is the Bloomington Normal Trades and Labor Assembly and Livingston and McLean Counties Building and Construction Trade Council. They hosted an event. Yes, it's meant to be long and winded so that way you get confused. But they hosted an event, a candidate forum, and a lot of these candidates were later endorsed. Crystal Abel was endorsed for Normal Township Supervisor. And like I said, there's a conflict of interest there. Believe it or not, there is a conflict of interest. You know, the Dalton mayor, she calls herself super mayor. She is a supervisor, township supervisor. She's the Thornton Township Supervisor, and she's also the Dalton mayor. And we don't even need to go there. Just look up Tiffany Henyard. She's under FBI investigation for corruption. This war, it's a door that is open for corruption. Okay, there's a conflict of interest there. She serves on the county board, and then she also is looking to serve in the town of Normal. That's a conflict of interest. Cody Hendricks, I believe his husband or boyfriend, he serves on county board. Eric Hansen, I believe is his name, and Cody Hendricks, serves as Bloomington City Council member, but is now looking for mayor. There's a conflict of interest there. Okay. Then Abby Scott, she wants Bloomington Ward. What is it, 9? There's a Bloomington Ward that she's going for. I think it's Bloomington Ward 9. I gotta look that up real quick. I can't keep up with all of this, but she's Abby Scott, and Abby Scott, yeah, she's Ward 9. Abby Scott is in a relationship with Corey Byrne. Okay, Corey Byrne is serving on the county board as well. So to have multiple conflicts of interest here, that's concerning. This is a conflict of interest. Just think about it in common sense terms. You have big government, which is the overarching government, which is the McLean County government in charge of Bloomington Normal, okay, along with, a few other communities in McLean County, but they're in charge of Bloomington Normal. Okay, Bloomington, the people who serve on the council and the Bloomington mayor, they're in charge of Bloomington, and the people who serve Normal, they're in charge of Normal. So there is a conflict of interest when you have multiple, like in Crystal Abel's case, she is serving as a county board member and a Normal Township supervisor. Okay, so you don't want that. Lots of conflicts of interest here, and it's really concerning. And I get it; it's a small town, but we should be doing our best to try to avoid those instances of conflict of interest. So, but after Cody Hendricks, I wanted to get to this question. They said, will you support project labor agreements for local government construction projects? A project labor agreement is between local government unit and the area construction unions, ensuring that all those hired on the governmentally funded project are hired through local union halls with no union work stoppages. So really what this question is asking is, hey, are you willing to get out here and tell us right now to our faces if you're going to hire us as a union for this government project and not look at the possibility of a different private company coming in or an outside private company coming in and doing it cheaper? You are going to hire us and you are going to let us do the work for this amount of money and come to a project labor agreement with us. I mean, what we should be doing is a low bid process where we take the lowest bidder to do the work that government needs or construction projects that the government has. Okay, that the lowest bidder to save the taxpayers' money. Okay, that's what we should be focused on, and we shouldn't oh yes, because you contributed to my campaign or you endorsed me, I'm going to ensure that the local unions here, they get the job. No. We're not doing that. You should be, as a government official, looking at it from a financially responsible lens, and you're going to pick the people who do it the cheapest and do it the most effective. I've told you before, politicians giving labor contracts to their buddies is the worst thing for the overall citizenry. It's what Michael Madigan did. Okay, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. That's what this question is really all about. And they phrase it in a cutesy, long, formatted way, but that's really what that question is all about. It's about, hey, are you going to scratch our back if we endorse you? That's literally what this question is. So another topic that came up, and this is where I agree with Kimberly Harris's answer. I kind of really like it, which is shocking because she's the most leftist candidate for Normal mayor. You've got Chris Cusco and you've got Kathleen Lorenz, and then you've got Kimberly Harris. And I think that this is an interesting lineup, but she was asked about the Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. This is a property in Uptown Normal. And apparently there are union concerns about renovations. Union leaders have filed a complaint alleging a series of violations related to pay and other workplace standards. Labor groups have protested the contractor's use of out-of-state workers for a project there. Look, the Marriott is a private company. If they don't want to use in-state workers or local unions, then they have the ability to do that. If they want to hire out-of-state workers for projects there, they can do that. Kimberly Harris says this. She says it's a very interesting scenario. I'll put that out there. She's a normal mayor candidate. She goes, what makes this interesting is the fact that Marriott is considered private. It's still considered private, if you will. So why are you asking me this question is essentially what Kimberly Harris is saying, right? Why do we care about, the inner workings of the normal Uptown Normal Marriott Hotel and who they're hiring for their renovation projects? There's nothing we can do to force the Marriott to use you guys or use unions, local unions here. If they want to use out-of-state work or to do the projects and the renovations there, then they can do that. So the union leaders, I guess they filed the complaint and they've alleged violations related to pay and other workplace things. Harris actually has a great answer here. She just says, look, it's private. This is really interesting, but it's private. So it's a private company, and there's no reason government should be getting involved or being asked about this. It's up to, of course, the Illinois Department of Labor actually has confirmed that they are investigating the Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. Now, the only reason why I could see government getting involved is if there is nefarious activity going on, say like prostitution or illegal immigration, like if there's, if they're doing slave labor, right? And they're not paying immigrants there. Now that has been rumored for years about the Marriott Hotel. That could be a possibility. And I have no idea, but the Illinois Department of Labor has confirmed that they are investigating the hotel. This comes after union leaders filed a complaint against a series of violations related to pay and workplace standards. Now, the only reason why government should get involved here, local government like your mayor and your town council, is if there is violations to the law, right? And then that would mean law enforcement would have to come in and stop, either the slave labor or prostitution or whatever is going on in the hotel. That's the only reason why government would be getting involved. But this is a private company. They can do whatever they want and let them fight it out. Okay, let the union leaders fight it out. And they filed the complaint with the Illinois Department of Labor. I mean, there's nothing really that Kimberly Harris, Chris Coos, or Kathleen Lorenz could do unless they make the Marriott Hotel public. But I don't see that happening. Labor groups in McLean County have been protesting the contractor's use of out-of-state workers for a project there. Yeah, because it's a private company and they can contract whoever they want to do the project there, right? It's a private company. They can hire whomever they want for the renovation projects. The only reason, like I said, government should be getting involved is if there is criminal activity, say, harboring illegal aliens or prostitution or something like that, then the local law enforcement would have to come in and they'd have to be like, no, we got to shut this down. But that's the only reason why government would be going in, not because the company didn't want to work with the local unions here and they hired out-of-state people to do it. It's a private company. They can do that. And I have no idea why this was asked of the mayoral candidates in this candidate forum. It's really weird question. And it seems like they're just butthurt because this private company didn't use them for the renovations, which it's like, okay, you probably were charging too much. That's why they went out of state to have the renovations done by somebody out of state. It's just a really weird situation. All right, Crystal Abel was endorsed for Normal Town Supervisor. Like I said, I don't know if Chad Burke was invited to this candidate forum, but they get paid a pretty hefty salary. From what I understand, Normal Township Supervisor Crystal Abel alone shouldn't be the Normal Township Supervisor because there is a perceived conflict of interest, being that she is also a county board member. She serves in a higher role of government that oversees this role of government or oversees this community, Normal, and there is potential for conflict or potential for corruption and opens up the door for corruption. Okay, so you don't want that. You don't want conflict of interest or even a perceived conflict of interest. All right, I got to take a quick break. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in. Yes. Those issues are ignored just as all the underbrush in California was ignored. Yeah, your basic infrastructure, your public safety and all of that, they're so focused. Like Los Angeles, for example, much like the city of Bloomington, they're going to be focused on, building up Los Angeles's downtown area and making it nice and walkable and, having these 15-minute smart cities, right? And they're so focused on that they didn't focus on the underbrush. Bloomington, they're so focused on building, these little projects, these pet projects, as I like to call them, to get people into the downtown Bloomington area, which never really happens. Okay. For example, the money that's been poured into Grosinger Motors Arena, they've been in the whole, they don't do well. There's not a whole ton of people going to Grosinger Motors Arena. I think they've done a little better over the years, but not a ton of people go there. I'm not saying just don't put taxpayer dollars towards it. I mean, this should be a private thing. Taxpayer dollars to try to save this Grosinger Motors Arena is just silly. Number one. Number two, it's been proven that people don't go into these areas for extended periods of time. If you want to have a few lunch places there and a few shops there, right, while people, they might take a trip up there, then sure. But the reason why a lot of these downtown areas suffer, like go to every single downtown area, like Decatur downtown area, you'll see and you'll talk to the business owners there and they'll say, yeah, we don't do very well. And there's a reason for that. And there's nothing that the business is doing. There's nothing really that you can do to fix that. It's really just Americans and their innate nature to want to stay in rural areas and not frequent the downtown area. Okay, they go there to work and then they go and return home to their families. Okay, they might take a trip or a vacation or something up into downtown, but or go see a concert once in a while, but they're not living in these areas. They're not staying every single day there. Okay, and it's tough to own a business in a downtown area. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't, but it's tough. And the reason why is because Americans have this innate culture within them to not stay in those areas. They don't like being on top of one another. They don't even use the damn sidewalks. They walk through the grass. Okay. This is just American culture. And to try to shove this down the throats of the taxpayer and use their money for things like this, it's just never proven to work, which is why, of course, California, the governor was excited to announce that in 2028, I think they're doing a complete rebuild of Los Angeles, and it's going to be a smart, walkable city, and this is what they ultimately want. And, never let a good crisis go to waste. And that's what they're excited for. It's the smart city, the smart 15-minute walkable city. And they probably are glad that they're going to get their walkable city and they didn't have to demo anything because the fire took care of pretty much all of that because they neglected the underbrush and because they neglected public safety in Bloomington. There are issues. So the storms that happened, the June storms, which everybody was like, oh, that's so unprecedented. No. We get rain, buckets and buckets of rain every single year, specifically in May, June. April flowers, May flower, or what is the saying? April showers, May flowers, or something like that. I don't know. But we in Illinois get tons of rain every single year. And what happened, a lot of people's homes were flooded. Those who live in the city of Bloomington, a lot of people's homes were flooded. Because of the consolidated sewer system that wasn't touched for years, actually decades and decades, the sewer system wasn't touched. So they've neglected the public infrastructure or the infrastructure, needed the sewer system, the city sewer system. They neglected that and ultimately wound up with sewage backed up in people's houses, which was really, really bad because people couldn't stay in their houses. That's really bad for you to be breathing in sewage. People had to go stay in hotels and everything like that. So it was a real nightmare when Bloomington dropped the ball, really, with their consolidated sewer system. And it's outdated and they should have been working on their sewer system a long, long time ago. But they didn't because they ignored it because they were more focused on things like the Grosinger Motor Arena. Okay, so We're doing something a little bit different today. I know that a lot of you like the national news. We are going to get to some of that here now, but go ahead, smash that like button, subscribe. This kind of stuff is really important. If you live in the Bloomington Normal area, you need to know what your candidates are saying in open forums and what they're admitting to in open forums too. I'm right back. Hey, good morning. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. I'm going to be honest with you, $60 million towards fixing the consolidated sewer system in Bloomington. I think I'd prefer that over the Bloomington downtown streetscape. I'm just going to be honest with you. If any of you had your homes flooded, my heart goes out to you. That really sucked a couple of years ago in June. We had a ton of rain, which happens. It's not like climate. I think of the, who was it? Somebody said something. I want to say that it was Chris Coos who talked about how the it was historic floods and climate change, and that's because of climate change. And it kind of is reminiscent of the California wildfires. Everybody always says, "Oh, this is just so unprecedented. The winds and it's climate change, climate change." No. It was government incompetence. They didn't get rid of the underbrush in California. And that's what led ultimately to these huge, huge wildfires. They didn't fix this very, very dated consolidated sewer system in Bloomington. And from what I understand, I don't think it's still fixed. They're working on it, but I don't think that it's near what it should be. Let's throw the $60 million. If we're going to do $60 million, let's throw it towards that, right? I think people would much prefer that, because a lot of people, no matter how much money you throw towards these pet projects like Grosinger Motors Arena, Americans innately, they don't frequent these areas as much as you'd like them to. They come into the downtown area, they go to work, and then they go home, okay? And they drive in 15 minutes into the downtown area. You're not going to get people to go live near the downtown area. It just won't. Because that's not how Americans operate. There was actually a study done. Americans didn't even walk on the pathways that were created for them by the government, or they didn't sit on the benches that were created for them by the government. They walked in the grass, or they sat on the curb. They didn't follow what the government wanted for them in these walkable cities and in these smart cities, because Americans have this way of coloring outside the lines, and you can't get them to color inside the lines by throwing a ton of taxpayer money at it. I would much rather the $60 million to go towards, I don't know, the consolidated decades-old Bloomington sewer system. That's something that needs to be addressed, and it's still not fixed, and this is going to take some time, but I would say the $60 million would be worth more there. Having people not stand in their own sewage and smell their own sewage and have it backed up into their homes just because we get a little bit of rainfall in June and July. Okay, so I want to shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about Colorado. Someone should really tell Colorado Public Schools that they don't have the authority. They don't have more authority than the federal government. Somebody should really tell them that. But these people don't like when facts interfere with their fear-mongering agenda. So some school districts, what they've done in Colorado, they've announced plans to combat ICE and resist Trump's deportation plans. Okay, or the problem with that is that elementary schools, look, folks, they're not on Trump's deportation list. Okay, this is not something that Donald Trump is looking at right now. Elementary schools, what Tom Homan is looking at is hardened criminals, people who commit heinous crimes. That's where the deportations are going to start. Okay, not in Colorado elementary schools. Okay, but these people thrive on fear and chaos. They want you to think that Donald Trump is going to go in there and deport all these little kids and rip kids from their families and deport them. And it's all about fear mongering. So take a listen to this. Here we go.
As President Trump takes office, school districts around the state are preparing for what they'll do if immigration officers show up at their schools.
I've met with all leaders.
Denver Public Schools Superintendent Alex Marrero is telling principals if a government official shows up at one of their schools, don't let them in. He's instructed staff to use the intercom and find out what agency they're with, why they're there, and if they have a warrant. If they have a warrant, ask for a copy. If they don't, tell them to leave. Aurora Public Schools has a similar policy, though its policy says if a federal immigration officer says it's an emergency, the staffer should comply and then call the district's legal office. Large-scale ICE raids have happened at workplaces in the state before, but as far as we know, not at schools. In December 2006, Republican President George W. Bush was in office when ICE raided the Swift meatpacking plant in Greeley. They arrested 262 people, separating families. In June 2011, when Democrat Barack Obama was president, it happened again, on a smaller scale in Fort Morgan. 11 workers at Wildcat Dairy were arrested after an ICE raid there. Fort Morgan Superintendent Rob Sanders says the district has talked to its principals about the possibility of school raids and issued the sharpest pushback against them that we've seen, saying he's hopeful the 2011 precedents of staying away from sensitive areas will be adhered to. And if that is not the case, we will be asking for correct paperwork, such as a legal subpoena and not simply an ICE warrant. We will not allow anyone on campus without the proper and legal paperwork. The Greeley-Evans School District, where that raid in '06 happened, told us tonight that a valid judicial warrant would be needed to get into a school and make an arrest. They made no mention of any specific plan centered around ICE officers.
Okay, so we're not talking about kids here, first of all. Second of all, according to 9 News, Denver Public School Superintendent Alex Navarro sent a memo to DPS principals last week, which said if the government official shows up at your schools, don't let them in. Don't comply with federal law, or federal authorities. That's great. So he instructed staff to use the intercom to find out what agency they're with, why they are there, and if they have a warrant. If they have a warrant, the memo says to ask for a copy, and if they don't, tell them to leave. The memo included scheduling for training for staff on what to do if an agent showed up. So this is the so their announcement essentially here, this Denver Public School Superintendent, they want their teachers to defy federal law and to be a hassle to federal authorities. And really, I don't get paid enough as a public school teacher. If you're, in Denver public, you're probably thinking to yourself, you know what? Yeah, I if I was but a lot of these public school teachers, they're activists and they're probably all for it. Okay. Now, if I was in the public school system, I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to defy federal law. Hell no, you're not paying me nearly enough to do that. Because I don't think this is a good example to be setting for students either. Teachers defying federal authorities. Additionally, how many migrant children do they have in these public schools where this would even be necessary? Do you really think ICE is going to be going into these public schools and deporting children? No, that's not happening. They're going to be focusing on hardened criminals first, and then they're going to go after the parents, and then they'll find out if the kids are in public school, and then they'll go from there and get the kid to be deported with the parents back to the country they came from. Okay, so Aurora Public Schools, they have a similar policy. It says that if an agent speaks with a student, politely inform the federal immigration officer that they have a process regarding requests to talk to students, and that you need to contact APS, the Aurora Public School Office of General Counsel. The policy then instructs staff to find a school leader who should ask the immigration officer to give you a few minutes to call the legal office. Okay, so you have to call the legal I mean, this is just a whole can of worms. And they said you can wait outside of the school until we can contact the general counsel's office. The policy does have an exception, though. So here's Aurora Public Schools' exception to this policy. They say, there may be extremely rare situations where a federal immigration officer tells you something along the lines that this is urgency or an emergency, and these are rare circumstances. Alternatively, the immigration officer might say something like, I'm giving you a lawful order to let me talk to the student in this situation. You would have to comply with the officer's order and not interfere, immediately contacting the APS legal office. So this is a lot to ask of school teachers. They should be focused on, I don't know, educating the next generation. That should be their priority, not trying to skirt federal law enforcement or defy federal orders. Okay, the fact that public school is run by activists, though, is very deeply concerning. And these activists, I won't even call them teachers anymore, they're activists. It's deeply concerning that we've got these activists here who are willing to not teach the kids, but comply with the superintendent and the requests of the Aurora Public Schools to pretty much skirt federal law enforcement. It's deeply concerning that you've got activists here. Also, it shouldn't shock us that one of the districts in Aurora was in Aurora, okay, that came out with this policy where they are resisting Trump's deportation orders. This was predictable because this is the same community, Aurora, Colorado. You guys should know this. It's where those transnational gang members had held up apartments and they were wreaking havoc on Americans. And then they protected the illegal immigrants or the gang members in these apartment complexes for months. They protected them and said that wasn't happening. It's not happening. But they've been wreaking havoc on Americans who live in these apartments for months now. So anyone in favor of this policy is obviously not interested in American citizens being first and foremost, and they have no place in our nation's public school system if they aren't willing to, put American students first. You've got no business in the public school system. All right, I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Now, look, folks, there's a Steals and Deals. You guys are going to have to go and check it out, our Steals and Deals website. You can check it out at cities929.com. Right now, actually, they're out of stock. Tobin's Pizza, $20 gift certificates to Tobin's, but you also have a $30 pizza pack to Pizza Ranch. So we've still got that one. Our Steals and Deals website is liecity929.com. You can click on the Steals and Deals on the Steals and Deals web or logo on our website. $30 pizza pack to Pizza Ranch for just $15. We've also got a few other things. Iron Coyote Challenge, Park. They've got the 3-month adult fitness membership going for half off. So check it out, cities929.com. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Anna Navarro slandering some of these black artists who performed at Trump's inauguration. There's nothing more racist, like I said, than a liberal towards a black conservative. Anna Navarro is no exception. She called black artists, quote, trained seals for daring to not go along with the monolith narrative that she has come up with in her lack of a brain. Okay, this narrative that black people have to think a certain way and they have to be Democrats and they have to vote Democrat and they have to have a liberal way of thinking. And if they're black conservatives, shame on you. You're a trained seal, and shame on you for daring to not go along with this monolith narrative that I've come up with. So Navarro, she has a problem with Snoop Dogg because he thinks differently than her, and she pointed out, of course, on The View, she's a lady on The View, that he despised Donald Trump during his first term, which is true. He did despise Donald Trump. And I'm going to get to that here in a second, but she lacks critical thinking. People are entitled to changing their minds, okay? Not everyone is a mindless monolith like her, where she just thinks one way for the rest of her life and vote blue no matter who, right? Additionally, it doesn't do his career any kind of favors to be tolerant towards Donald Trump. And most certainly, no one told him to do what he did, perform at the inauguration. It was the inaugural ball, I think it was, or like the inauguration ball that took place after the inauguration ceremony. His managers, probably the guys in charge of Snoop Dogg, probably advised him against it. But look, according to Anna Navarro, this makes him a trained SEAL, even though he acted of his own free will, definitely acted against the grain here. His managers probably preferred he not perform at the Trump inauguration because it doesn't do his career any favors. Take a listen to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to just put a quick button on it because I was not offended by Biden pardoning his family because I think, just like Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you or tells you who they are, believe them the first time.
Right.
We've already had a Trump presidency. We know that this administration is a vengeful one. We know this is a vengeful man. And if I can protect me and mine, I would do that. And so I think we need to show Joe Biden some grace.
I think we need to show Joe Biden some grace. So that was the wrong clip, but it was also the right clip, though, because, you know, she's, of course, defending Joe Biden pardoning his family. These were preemptive pardons. Donald Trump never did a preemptive pardon. We talked a lot about that yesterday, how Donald Trump never did anything like that. Joe Biden did preemptive pardons, where before they even are charged with anything or convicted of anything, he's pardoning them for crimes that God knows it's a sweeping pardon. God knows what kind of crimes these people committed. We'll never know because he gave them a preemptive pardon. But I do want to get to this as well. This is about Snoop Dogg, and she calls out black artists for performing at the Trump inauguration, and she calls them trained SEAL. Now, that was Sonny Houston, who you heard talking about the pardons, Joe Biden. And look, folks, preemptively pardoning somebody, you know, as Chuck Schumer said, this is an abuse of your presidential authority and of your presidential pardoning authority. Take a listen to Anna Navarro here talking about the black artist. This is the right clip.
Them, and it was so many other people. The thing that really, I think, was spotlighting Snoop is because of the things that Snoop Dogg said 10 days before the inaugural in 2017. And so look, if if you opposed and stood up against Trump in 2017, but you were there now, if you spoke up against Trump January 7th, 2021, but you were there now applauding him like a trained seal, Donald Trump has not changed. You've changed.
Yeah. I oddly agreed with Ilhan Omar on this. I think it's the first time I've agreed with her. I don't come for the artist. It's the same way I felt about Carrie Underwood. I think that people see it as part of American tradition to be part of this. They can issue statements if they want to clarify what their views are on Trump. I don't like coming for the artist. I think if you feel like people need to be boicotting Donald Trump, which I disagree with, I'd go to the politicians. I mean, if Barack Obama can show up for him, why shouldn't Snoop Dogg?
Okay, so there you have it, folks. Look, you're so objectively just stupid. I would never underestimate how stupid these people can be and how ignorant these people can be. According to Anna, she says that this is what a trained seal is. Snoop Dogg in 2017, I can't even say it on the radio, but he said anyone who performs for Trump at his inauguration is a blank, 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 blank Uncle Tom. Okay, racial slur, racial slur, racial slur, Uncle Tom. And Snoop Dogg now, he performs at this inaugural ball. It's an interesting shift, yes, but the fact that somebody changes their mind is proof that they're not a trained seal. He's going against the status quo. He's going against the entertainment industry, which means he's the opposite of a trained seal. Okay, so although it would have been much better that if he had supported Donald Trump prior to winning, now he's only supporting Donald Trump because he won, this would be a non-issue. Snoop Dogg should have came up before the 2024 election and supported Donald Trump. Many people despised Donald Trump in 2016 and in 2020, and they support him this time around. And this is proof that the media is largely irrelevant, especially the ladies on The View. Nobody's really listening to you and your trained seals comment about Snoop Dogg, lady, okay? He has the ability to change his mind, and in fact, it's the opposite of a trained seal because he's going against the status quo. He's going against the entertainment industry. This is the opposite of a trained seal. This is somebody who is a free thinker and not a monolith like you. All right, I got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, go ahead, smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We talked, I can't believe Snoop Dogg left, this monolith narrative that Democrats believe Black people have to subscribe to. You have to vote blue no matter who, and you have to think the way we think. Otherwise, you are an Uncle Tom, or you're not Black, or if you ain't. What was it that Joe Biden said? He said, "If you're not voting for me, you ain't Black." I was like, okay, like they're so racist. Nothing's more racist than a liberal towards a Black conservative. It's really kind of sad. So all this morning we were talking about local stuff. I actually agreed with Kimberly Harris on this issue with the Uptown Normal Marriott renovations. This was an interesting answer to the question that she had. She goes, it's interesting, but it is interesting because it's a private company, so I don't know why we're talking about it. So that's really what the sentiment I got here from Kimberly Harris's answer. She's running for Normal mayor. We've got Chris Coos running, and then we've also got Kathleen Lorenz running. But she says it's an interesting scenario. I'll put that out there. What's making it interesting is the fact that the Marriott itself is considered private, if you will. So it is considered private, yes. And the Marriott Hotel Conference Center, of course, this is a topic that was discussed at the candidate forum. The unions are concerned about the renovations at the Marriott Hotel and Conference Center property in Uptown Normal. Union leaders have filed a complaint alleging a series of violations. Now, this is separate, of course. We've got labor groups have protested the contractor's use of out-of-state workers for a project there. It's a private company. Okay, so there's no reason why the labor group should be upset about this. It's a private company. They can do whatever they want with their contracts and who does what renovations, okay? The labor groups are pissed, though, because they didn't use them, probably because it was too expensive. But separately, the union leaders have filed a complaint alleging a violation of violations related to pay and workplace standards. The only reason why government should be getting involved if there is, workplace violations as far as like child slave labor or prostitution or things that are against the law and are going on at the Marriott Hotel with the employees. That's the only reason why the government should come in and tell Marriott what to do with their employees. But, that's really weird to have like this as a question. The government can't say yes or no to who Marriott hires for their renovations. Okay, what do these labor groups really want these government officials to do about it? Labor groups in McLean County have been protesting the contractor's use of out-of-state work. So the contractor, being Marriott Hotel, they contracted the work to out-of-state workers because guess what? The Marriott Hotel is a private company. It's just weird. I don't know why this was an answer or question, but I like her answer. She, says, hey, this is a private company. This is really not my wheelhouse to be dictating to, she didn't say this, but this is the sentiment. She goes, the Marriott itself considers itself private. This is interesting scenario. I don't know what kind of violations are happening. Obviously, there was a complaint filed with the Illinois Department of Labor. That's up to them to investigate the Marriott Hotel. There's nothing that really normal mayors could do about it. Also, the labor unions asked of the mayoral candidates if they'd be supportive of reforming or undoing Tier 2 benefits, which really the normal mayor in Bloomington mayors have no say over that. That's a state issue. Tier 1 pensions are a little bit better than Tier 2. Tier 2 is obviously a way to try to address the state's underfunded pension system. It's $140 billion we're looking at in the hole. So glad I could update you on some local news. Let's come back. Good morning. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate you being here every morning, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Yes, earlier in the show, we did talk a lot about the candidates. There were 6 candidates who were endorsed. Crystal Label being one of them, the Normal Township Supervisor. Chad Burke is also running for Normal Township Supervisor. Like I said, Crystal Label, it seems like there's a perceived, at least conflict of interest here. She is also a county board member. Like I said, the county is Normal and Bloomington are part of the county. Okay. And if she's overseeing Normal as a county board member, can she also oversee Normal as a Normal Town Supervisor? I don't know. There just is a lot of conflict of interest. As you get Cody Hendricks serving right now as a Bloomington council member, but he's running for Bloomington mayor. And then you've got his husband, boyfriend, I don't know. They are on, or he's on the McLean County Board. Okay, so that is a conflict of interest right there. Like I said, McLean County oversees Bloomington Normal, along with other communities. Then you've also got Corey Byrne and Abby Scott. Abby Scott is running for Bloomington Ward 9. This is a perceived conflict of interest. You've got Corey Byrne sitting on the McLean County Board right now, and they're in like a relationship, I suppose. So like this is... there's just lots of conflicts of interest, and I really don't like this whole idea of my husband or wife is serving in a government capacity and I'm serving in a lower municipality. And, if I want something from the county, I could easily get it because my significant other is serving in an official capacity at the county level. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I mean, we see the problems with it. Actually, Dalton Mayor, she calls herself super mayor. She's the supervisor of Thornton Township, and she's also the mayor of Dalton. She's under FBI investigation right now. There's also Calamute mayor. Let me look at him. He is Thaddeus Jones. Thaddeus Jones is also under some sort of investigation. He's also a state representative, along with being the Calumet mayor. So there is just a potential for corruption. Okay. Thaddeus Jones, he's being investigated. Let me look up what he's being investigated for. I think it's like campaign finance, but he's being investigated for that. And it's not a good look to have you serving in multiple facets of government, one being a lower tier of government, and you're currently serving in a higher tier of government. Because with Thaddeus Jones, there is a potential here where you allocate more state dollars to the Calumet City that you're a mayor of, right? So it's just not a good look. All right, you guys have a blessed rest of your day. We're going to do it all over again tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. You've been listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal.